Welcome back to Pennsylvania Outdoor Life. You know, it's that time of the year that people are seeing and hearing birds. These guys are crowing, these guys are gobbling, things are happening out there. And we thought it'd be pretty interesting to take a look at an old way of preserving birds. These are all mounted by professional taxidermists, but Susan Gallagher from the Carbon County Environmental Education Center said that's not the oldest way to do it.
Today, I'm going to explain to you a little bit about a process we use to preserve birds that don't survive here. You know, we're a wildlife rehabilitation center. You know, we're an education center. Sometimes when birds come in and we try to rehabilitate them, it doesn't work. So unfortunately, we see a lot of deceased birds here, and I've always felt privileged to be able to touch a barn owl and feel how soft those wings are. We talk about the softness of the feathers as an adaptation for silent flight. And so when I get to touch those things, I ask myself, how can I allow that experience for kids or for visitors? So the process of preserving the birds, these are called museum skins or study skins. And there are a couple reasons why this is an advantage. You go to most nature centers and you see a lot of taxidermy, and taxidermy is wonderful. Taxidermy is expensive. It's difficult for a center like ours to afford a lot of that. It takes some specialized skills, specialized people. We have to take a bird to a taxidermist. With study skins, this is something that we can do in a minimal amount of time with a very minimal amount of materials. It's easy to learn. This is all self-taught stuff here that I've done here, and is relatively quick. This is a Cooper's hawk. So I wanted to start you through the process and mention this is something people have been doing for hundreds of years. This is how Audubon probably preserved many of his birds. It's a very time-worn, very traditional process. It starts with a dead bird, and what they may have done, 100 years ago is used toxic chemicals like arsenic to preserve, or straw or something to fill the bird. Now, like I said, it's an inexpensive process. We use borax as a preservative. So we're not really truly preserving the birds, we're really just drying them. If they get wet, if they're kept somewhere that's moist or humid, they will begin to decay. So we're going to dry it with some borax, and we're simply going to stuff it with some cotton. That's all it takes. Sew it up with a little bit of needle and thread. So, here we have about 29 cents worth of materials versus if, we go and have this taxidermy, it's going to cost us a couple $100.
The process begins with slicing the breast and slowly working the body away from the skin. It will eventually look like a small chicken with the skin and wing tips missing. Once the body is removed, the skin is rubbed down with borax, and the stuffing process begins with the eyes.
This is great. If you have kids who are interested in anatomy, we find a lot of kids who visit our environmental center are interested in blood and guts, and I think that's a normal part of growing up. And I think, if there's a kid who, you hear all these kids, oh, everybody wants to be a veterinarian, let them look inside a dead animal. Let them learn a little bit about anatomy. You look inside a dead animal, there are lessons there in physics, there are lessons in engineering, there are lessons in art. I mean, it's everything. Everything, that we talk about, STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, you can learn a lot about that by looking inside a dead bird, or, take your kids fishing inside a dead fish. This is all part of the learning process. So there's our little eyeballs. Going to try to make them look a little bit better. Turn our carcass, and now we're just going to stuff them with some cotton. This is where we would take the old carcass that we had and use it as sort of as a guide. So when you want to know what your cotton is supposed to look like, what your cotton shape should be, you can just model it after the little carcass that came out of the bird. So we'll take some cotton. And just model it. Birds have all these flight muscles up in the chest, and then the abdomen gets a lot more narrow. So we just sort of model it the same way you would that body. Put it in there. and then stitch it up with some needle and thread and let it dry. As it dries, it'll shrink a little bit, and you want to store it someplace dry where it's safe from insects, where it's safe from a lot of moisture, humidity, things like that. And you know, this will keep. There are some of these in museums that are hundreds of years old. And I should mention, here at the Environmental Center, we don't keep anything if it's really unusual. We've had in some birds that are rare for our area. We just sent a Caspian tern off to a museum. We prepped him first like this and then sent him off to a museum. So we tend to keep the more common things. This is an education collection, not a scientific collection, and that way we can be sure that if a kid comes along and touches this and damages it, or if our storage conditions here aren't perfect, we're not losing anything that's of real scientific value. This is more an educational collection than it is a scientific one. So that's it. If we stitch him up, we'll have a nice Cooper's hawk, smooth out those feathers a little bit, and get him, or her, get her looking a little bit nicer, and that's it. It's simple, it's enjoyable to me. I love anatomy, like I said, a lot of kids do, I think, as well, and it's an easy thing that you can do. So that's museum study skins in a nutshell.
Susan, you're always so educational, you're always so fun to work with, and of course that whole gang down there at the Carbon County Environmental Education Center are always on hand to answer your questions. We are indeed going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.